Hey everyone, once again we are wrapping up 2022 pretty quickly, and for those of you who have received some natural gas royalties or anticipate some more and more royalties in the near future, this video might be the one you've been hoping for. This is part 2 of a video series about how royalty owners can get their ducks in a row. In part 1, I talked about keeping some more of the cash flow that comes through your household and keeping it for yourself as opposed to taxes. In this video, part 2, we're going to talk about the details of how to handle your royalty check. As these things grow in size, we get more and more questions like, how can I be smart with this money as it comes to me? Well, I've got some answers queued up for you right in this clip. Welcome everyone to another Blue Collar Wealth video. We sure hope you find these to be really helpful. One of our goals is to help you keep more of what's coming through your door. Sorry, I did not intend to make that rhyme, so it won't be one of those videos. Also, though, we want to help you reduce the chaos that sometimes gets overwhelming, right? This part 2 video will focus on how specifically to handle those checks as they're coming in each month. In a previous video, I did some of these, I did some with my peers as well as a local businessman, Bill Rourke. And Bill mentioned a common piece of advice that he likes to give to people who ask him what they should do with their royalty check. He likes to tell them, hold 30% out for taxes, save 50% for yourself, and then go have fun with the other 20%. I really do like the simplicity of that advice, and it seems to resonate with many of you who have given us feedback and talked to us about that. But as simple as it sounds, when you try to execute that plan, it sometimes can trip people up and they get sort of bogged down in the details. Let's see if we can clear that up in your mind and get you set to take care of these royalties. Not just take care of them, but really use this as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to fuel your future. The best way that I like to describe setting up your finances to use the 50-30-20 concept is something I like to call the bucket method. I'm not the first one to invent this idea, not even close, but I think it's a very good visual way for you to arrange your finances when you're getting fluctuating payments like we see with royalties. The bucket method is simply setting up buckets or accounts to receive and collect money as that money comes into you. When certain buckets are full, you no longer need to add any more to them, so they can be skipped over and you can begin filling up the next bucket. Or you can take your excess money from royalty checks and each month fill up a number of buckets at the same time. Let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to throw a graphic on the screen that I want you to take a close look at. This is the bucket method in theory, right? So basically, if you look along the left side, you'll see 30% goes into the tax bucket, 50% getting saved, probably in several buckets, and 20% to fill up the fun bucket, which is, well, it's whatever the heck you want it to be. That's the fun part of that bucket. Let's start with the tax bucket. It's pretty cut and dry. We're using roughly 30% for this number, but I highly, highly recommend you work closely with your accountant or CPA to determine what you truly should set aside for your taxes. Remember, royalties are often all over the place, so this money comes into, as it's coming into you, you should communicate that with your tax professional and let them tell you how much to pay in your quarterly estimated taxes. Based on other things you have going on in your financial life, they may suggest that you dial that percentage up or down from the 30% shown here, which is totally fine because those percentages on the left side of the screen are just guidelines. So we'll talk more about that as we go. But next, let's look at the fun bucket, which, by the way, might just be my new favorite financial term from now on, at least in 2022. I like that term. So a quick background on the fun bucket. A question that we get a lot is, hey, can I afford blank? And examples of what blank might be for different people are a new car, truck, camper, four-wheeler, tractor, garage, addition to the house, a swimming pool, second home, whatever, just to name a few. one of the reasons, though, that I love the idea of placing 20% or whatever amount you feel is right into an account such as a fund bucket is that this will make it so much easier for you to answer that question. And I mean that. Like the question of, can I afford something, is usually masked in sort of a fog because people don't really know where they're headed or what their priorities are. So it's kind of like asking somebody, am I almost there, without actually telling them where you're headed. So by defining your priorities and creating these different accounts or buckets to make those priorities a reality, you have actually taken the step and define what your goals are and how much you need for each of those goals. So we'll talk about that in the next step, but now you can see why the fund bucket is an important part of the picture. You no longer have to go ask someone, can I afford it? You can just look at that account or that bucket and see how much money's in there, and you can easily know that it's to use at your discretion at any time. Simple stuff. I really hope that makes sense so far, at least up to this point. So now I'd like to focus on how we go from theory to practice. So this is the same graphic that we looked at earlier, but now I've shown a hypothetical $10,000 royalty check received for a given month. How does that break down within these different buckets? It's pretty simple here. 30% or $3,000 in this example goes right into the taxes owed bucket. 20% or $2,000 gets thrown into the fund bucket. We love that one. And the remaining 50% or $5,000 in this example is scheduled to be saved. Now, I use the word save as a sort of catch-all phrase because you can either be saving for something in your future, or you might also be saving yourself interest on debt payments that you owe by paying them down early. Let's take a closer look at the various options that you have with this extra money that we're going to save. Now, full disclosure, I'm an old school financial nerd, so I get excited about this part of the conversation because this is really where a financial advisor can provide a lot of value for his or her clients. Let's be honest, paying taxes and filling up the fund bucket, they're pretty easy, simple concepts. What you do with all the rest of the money is where most people get hung up. I'm going to show you a more detailed illustration of some of the most common buckets that we help clients fill up and take care of. So sticking with the same example of an original $10,000 royalty check that came in, and assuming we're saving 50% or $5,000 this month, the question is, where does that money go? And in this example, the very first bucket that gets filled up would be cash on hand. You can see that I've entered $25,000 for this bucket. Now, that might be higher or lower than your number, but this bucket is for having cash on hand, and it's for whatever dollar amount makes you feel comfortable and gives you the ability to basically sleep well at night so you're not staring at the ceiling. You can see below that this is your liquid money, right? That means it's the money that you can get your hands on real quickly. And if you need it for anything that happens in your life, it's there. So these are things like your checking accounts, savings accounts, money markets, things like that. I want to pause for just a second here and talk about a common question of how many buckets should there be when it comes to savings? Geez, there's no set answer for that question. It's totally up to you. This is 100% up to you. As I mentioned earlier, the cool thing about the bucket method, it forces you to identify what's important to you and then prioritize those things so that this extra money can go direct toward paying down some of your debts or directly toward saving toward whatever goals are important to you. Or often the best choice is a combination of those two things. As you can see here, one of the buckets that I have on the screen is debts owed. Right? Those debts can come in many forms, as you can see below, like credit cards, auto loans, home mortgages. Those are the most common. I won't go into it here, but some debts are considered bad debt, maybe because the interest rate, or usually because you can't deduct the interest that you're paying. So we like to hit those first, but oftentimes as an advisor, we suggest our clients not pay all their debt off at once, but instead try to strike a good balance between saving for other things and also chopping down that debt at a reasonable pace. Trust me, a lot in this bucket will depend on the current interest rates versus current interest rate owed on your existing debt. What is that spread? And as you can see, we've created more like 3 more buckets to the right. And these are in order really of time. The rainy day bucket is for your typical investments. As you begin to grow your wealth, you stop buying things and begin paying off your debt or investing in assets. And you hope those assets will grow and eventually generate you income in the future. These are things like CDs, brokerage accounts, stocks, bonds, and many other things like that that you can choose for that rainy day bucket. On that topic, it's really an important note that you should remember this rainy day money should have really strong diversification. You really should avoid investing all in one thing or all in one place. You want to be able to access it on any rainy day or for whatever reason without getting hit with too much tax or early withdrawal penalties. There's a million ways to build this investment portfolio over time. Far too many to cover in this video, but I think you get the idea. The next bucket over is the retirement bucket. And I think that's self-explanatory. Most people know what retirement money means and the types of accounts that you can use to fund those retirement days. A few of these are listed below, and you can see the typical characteristics of that type of money. The last bucket over is, I have it shown here as gifting. There are a lot of ways to gift money to your kids, your grandkids. A few of them are listed here. 529 plans for college. You can set up trusts. You can give cash, all kinds of things. The biggest emphasis that I'd like to say about this bucket is it does not have to get filled right away. It doesn't actually even have to be on your list right now. But if it is, the timing has to be right for you before you start gifting. You do not want to get overzealous and over-optimistic and gift all your money away as it's coming in, and then find yourself destitute when the royalties suddenly go away, if that happens. We give that same advice to anyone in our office, especially earlier on in their retirement. I think the biggest priority that most clients have when they come to us is that they don't want to outlive their money. None of us do. But once they feel confident that they've achieved that first goal, then the timing starts to become right for them to start thinking about gifting. This is another category where there are many, many ways to do it. And they're too numerous for this video, but I just want you to know that this is a bucket you may want to start thinking about down the road. I just have one last visual for you, and that is to show you how a typical bucket strategy begins to play out for that savings part as the money actually starts to flow. So again, in that example of 50% of a $10,000 check, that would be $5,000 that you plan on saving. And let's assume, as you can see in this first bucket, we've set it at $25,000. But let's assume that that's full already and you have that money on hand. So you don't need to take any of this $5,000 for that month and add it to that bucket, right? Instead, it flows to the other buckets in whatever percentages you would like it to. Remember, you're the one setting these amounts. In this example, this person wants to pay down their debts pretty aggressively, but yet still have some money for that rainy day. So they take about 75% of that $5,000 that month and go to pay down the debt, and 25% or $1,250 to invest in the rainy day bucket. You probably noticed that the last two buckets don't have any money going in there from this royalty check. Well, based on what I said about the gifting earlier and the timing having to be right, that probably doesn't surprise you. But you might be surprised that they're not filling up their retirement bucket. There's a simple explanation and reason for that, though. Because a large amount of royalties are flowing into their household already, they have already dialed up the maximum contribution limits that they can put into those retirement plans through their work. So they don't view the retirement as a priority for this extra money that's coming in from royalties now. So they can really focus on those first two buckets and build some good rainy day money, but really get rid of some of that bad debt. When that debt bucket is finally paid off, they can then focus 100% of their money to go into that rainy day bucket, which is probably at that point going into a whole bunch of things at that time. I just think all of this stuff is really, it's just great. I mean, if you find yourself in the fortunate situation of receiving royalties over and above everything else you already have going on in your life, then you're likely looking at a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to not only fill in the gaps of your current financial picture, but possibly also change the direction of your entire family and its future going forward. We just don't know how long your royalties will last or how much you will get over what period of time. It's a very tricky cash flow management situation. I hope I've shown you today that the bucket strategy is a pretty darn good one to employ when it comes to managing cash flow that's coming to you like this, right? What you do with that saving portion of your monthly checks it can really make a difference, a substantial difference in your family's future. There are a lot of ways to do it and a lot of ways to be very smart and efficient with your money. Unfortunately, there are some ways for sure that you can screw it up and make mistakes and have regrets. We want to help you avoid those mistakes and those regrets. I hope that you found this video super helpful. I really love doing these videos. I also hope you either do something like this on your own or that you reach out to any of our advisors and ask for just a free consultation to talk more about how this might work in your life. I think it can make a huge difference for you, but you must decide that first. If you're interested in talking to one of our advisors, the usual, click the links around this video and we'll make it happen. Thanks for watching Blue Collar Wealth.